Hi everyone, it's great to see you. Today I'm going to be taking you around the yard on a tour of the bags in a pot planters. So you know that I love this method, and about 7 weeks ago I planted up the planters. They have come such a long way. So I'm going to show you a quick snapshot of how I planted them originally, and then I'll go over with you how they have grown in. This first planter was planted up with sweet Caroline lime green potato vine and some superbena. In the center, I put wee Bit Giddy, a type of hydrangea that stays relatively small, and this was the second year that I have grown this in this planter. Now, the wee Bit Giddy did fabulously and bloomed. The superbena filled in, the sweet potato vine took off. After a while, it became evident that the hydrangea was just getting a little bit too much sun. So I ended up taking that bag out and putting in my Boscobel rose, which loves sun. And that's how it looks right now. It is beautiful. I love the flexibility that the bag in the pot method gives me. The other bag in a pot that I have up on my deck also has the sweet potato vines, but I added in 3 of the Supertunia Bordeaux. And then in the center, I put another hydrangea, one I had overwintered in my cold shed, and this one is Cityline Mars. Now, Cityline Mars is one of those hydrangeas that might bloom in zone 6B, but might not. So I think it's totally worth protecting it through the winter to make sure that I get these beautiful blossoms, and it really came through again. So it is now looking beautiful with lots of its bicolored flowers, and these sort of have that purple center surrounded by the white edge. It really is spectacular, and I love how the sweet potato vine has just gone crazy. The Bordeaux is keeping up. You can still see it, but it is just like all this foliage and flowers. Just beautiful. When I had some leftover coleus that I had grown from seed, I ended up putting those in the rim gap of this planter, which I've never done before, but they have grown huge, and this planter is really in the shade, so it really is a good place for them to be. And in the center, I have another wee Bit Giddy. This one's blooming a lighter pink than my other wee Bit Giddies, but looks really pretty, and just all the foliage mingled together. This is a very tall planter. I think because it's in the shade, it's really reaching for the sun, but it makes it look really lush and full, which I'm loving. Now in this planter, I had overwintered 3 of the dressed up ball gown heuchera, which came back beautifully and have just been huge. I also tucked in 3 of the nonstop pink tuberous begonias, and between that, the rim gap has just filled in, looking so luscious and bright. Now in the center of this planter, I had put the wedding gown hydrangea, which is this beautiful white hydrangea that when it turns to fall, this will darken into a deep pink. But for now, you can see, although it doesn't have too many blossoms, they are beautiful. The white stands out in the shade so nicely. Now for this planter, this was the first time that I had placed a planter in this particular area, and I've already learned a lot. Initially, the rim gap was planted with creeping Jenny and some superbena. And then in the center, I placed Cityline Venice. Now, Venice has not been a particularly prolific bloomer for me, but I did get a number of blooms last year from it. As it's filled in, there's a couple things that I'm noticing. The creeping Jenny is doing really well. The superbena, I don't think it's getting enough sun. So we know that superbena really does like sun, and you can tell it's looking really leggy and stretching out, trying to get to the sun here. So I'm tempted to replace that, actually. It's not something that I'd put in this particular planter in this area again. Cityline Venice has 1 small blossom. It looks really healthy. I honestly don't know if it doesn't get enough sun here or not. That could be the case. So I'm going to leave it there for the rest of the season, but I do think next year that this one has given me some clues that I should change. I also learned a lot from this planter, which is in a lot more sun. So in this planter, I planted the Supertunia bubblegum, which we know takes off like crazy, and I planted some lemon coral sedum, which I had in other pots last year, but not this particular one. Now in the center, I have a nonstop pink rose, which has done fabulous. Not in bloom in this picture at the moment, but it did have a beautiful flush of first blossoms, and it has a ton of buds coming on it now. You'll see that the supertunias are looking a little leggy. I think I'll be making a video coming up soon about how to trim those back now to get them to look a little bit more full for the rest of the season. But what I'm really noticing is the lemon coral sedum, and goes for all the places that I have it in the yard. We've had a ton of rain, and I think it just is too much water for the lemon coral sedum. It's still there, it's holding its own, but it's not as happy, I think, as if we had watered it a little bit less. And pairing it with the supertunia also contributed to that too, because I do water my supertunias quite a bit. This planter ended up being a really fun one. So I put in 3 of the Supertunia bubblegum, but I had a lot of perennials in here. I had some creeping Jenny, I had a hosta in here, Rainbow's End, and then in the center I put the new Hydrangea Vanilla Swirl. So I got it last fall. It had overwintered in my shed, and as you can tell, the Supertunia bubblegum just is taken off, and it really has drowned out everything else. So as I was taking these pictures, I did peek in to see what is still left in there, and sure enough, the hosta is still there, the creeping Jenny is still there, you just can't see it. So I think I'm going to take those out and move them. I'm really learning that with the Supertunia bubblegum, I should just let it do its thing, and it's going to be the showstopper that it is, overflowing the edges. The Vanilla Swirl Hydrangea is beautiful. So its blossoms are not super big this year, but I love how it looks with sort of this pink twist in the white hydrangea. Just gorgeous. One that I would definitely get again. This planter had some of the lemon coral sedum in it and some of the scaevola, the fan flower, in a purple color around the edge. And that's a combination that I have used in the past, and I really liked it. Now in the center, I have the Hydrangea Cityline Paris. I have one of those in the ground, which is already in bloom. This one has buds that are coming, just starting to open now. So it's filled in quite a bit. We can see that the scaevola seems happy. It is overflowing the edges, and we can see the lemon coral sedum here. Once again, maybe not quite as happy as usual because of all the rain, but doing okay, holding on. And you can see these beautiful pink flowers coming for the Cityline Paris. Overall, I'd say this was a good placement for this pot. I like it. It's like a solid combination. It seems like it's doing well. It's one that I would come back to again. I really do like how the scaevola just keeps going, and I haven't had any trouble with rabbits with it, even though I see the rabbit around this pot a lot. This planter began with all perennials in its rim gap. I had some of the heuchera, some of the creeping Jenny in here, and over time I added some of the browallia. So this is the first time I've added browallia to a rim gap and ended up loving it. Now the hydrangea in the center is Froggie, and Froggie I did overwinter in the shed, of course, just like all of these, and it has come back so strong. So I really find that this planter has filled in beautifully. I feel like it's a great balance in the rim gap. I can see the heuchera, I can see the creeping Jenny. The Froggie hydrangea is filled in beautifully with its green flowers that are now starting to deepen to that pink. It's a really unique looking planter, and it's everything that I was hoping that it would be. So this one is a keeper. I love the placement of it. I have to make sure that I plant it up again this way next year. In a very shady spot in the front yard, I have this particular planter, and it has creeping Jenny, it has scaevola, which is that fan flower in purple, and in the center I put the hydrangea Everlasting Revolution. Now, Everlasting Revolution had been with me 3 years, and as I planted it, I said to all of you, I don't know if I'm going to keep this one. It has not bloomed, and I would like my hydrangeas to bloom. I think I might have scared it. So as this planter has filled in, and it's filled in really nicely, sure enough, the hydrangea this year has lots of buds on it. So it's not really open yet, but you can see that the blossoms are coming. The creeping Jenny is doing fabulously. The fan flower, there are some blossoms on it, but it is really very shady there. So I'm not super surprised. I'm really actually very pleased that it's doing as well as it is. Also in the front yard, I planted up this planter identical to the way I planted it last year because it did so well. In the rim gap, I have lemon coral sedum and scaevola, that fan flower. And last year, I was like, oh, this is the combination. This is the place. It is terrific. And in the center, I kept the same hydrangea, which is Cityline Vienna. Now, that was not a hugely prolific bloomer, but it did bloom last year. And if you take a look at where this hydrangea is now, once again, that lemon coral sedum, it just isn't taking off like it has in the past. Finally, let's end with the 2 urns by the front door. So this is the first year I'm using the bag in the pot method, and I have the mandevilla that is in the bag, which is then situated in the urn, and that rim gap is planted with the sweet potato vine and the superbena cherry burst. And I have to say, having the bag in that separate pot has been really, really good, especially with all the rain we've had and the watering issues. I've been able to water the sweet potato vines and superbena more and let the mandevilla stay happy a little drier. Now you will notice that the sweet potato vine is doing fabulous. The superbena is still there. However, it really is a much smaller plant, and you really do just get the effect of the sweet potato vine. But I have to say, I like it with such a bright lime color. It really is very, very pretty. The mandevillas seem to be blooming really well. I did spray them with neem oil a couple times for aphids, but overall they seem extremely healthy. The foliage is a nice deep green. I'm really, really happy with how they are looking, and what a difference just in the 6 to 7 weeks that they have been planted. So that gives you an idea of where the planters are after under 2 months. They are just doing so fabulously, and they will put on a lot more growth between now and the end of the summer too. So I'll give you another update come the end of the summer. I am just loving seeing how everything though is flourishing and growing in. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.